And if you saw anything, you like the look of, take your reference code with you to your local job centre. They'll be able to give you all the details and help arrange interviews too. Now, if you live in Birmingham, would like some guidance on training and job search, Positive Image may be your answer. They're running a 12-week programme for unemployed women aged 18 to 65. The aim is to rebuild your confidence and to update and acquire new skills for today's job market. You can contact them from 021 for Birmingham 554 2855. That's Birmingham 554 2855. Yabade or Suzanne will tell you all about it. The course starts next Monday, the 8th of January, so give them a ring later today to find out what it's all about. And that's all from me for this morning. Tomorrow we'll have details of a couple of computing courses being run by Halesowen College. Hope you can join me then. Bye for now.
This is Central Television. Now we join the team from ITN for the national and international morning news.
Ambulance chiefs enter the dispute. They say the Health Secretary is devaluing their work. Good morning, it's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 3rd of January. You're watching the early morning news from ITN. The headlines: chief ambulance officers have spoken out for the first time during the current pay dispute, and they've been critical of the Health Secretary's reported remarks about the service. A 10-week-old baby will join her mother in prison today after the latest controversial judgment by Justice James Pickles. And the entire Politburo of the Romanian Communist Party has been placed under arrest. Later in the programme, a special report from Transylvania, where ethnic tradition is being translated into political strength for Romania's forthcoming elections. And from American television, diplomatic manoeuvres in Panama hot up as wanted fugitive Manuel Noriega spends his 10th night holed up in the Vatican embassy. But first, the main stories. Chief ambulance officers have spoken for the first time in public about the 4-month-old pay dispute. Leaders of their association say the work of ambulance staff is being undermined by remarks on their professionalism. It follows comments in a letter by the Health Secretary Ken Clarke that most ambulance men do a worthwhile job, but not an exceptional one.
The officers are the most senior ambulance managers and have so far remained aloof from the dispute. In a statement, their association said they felt any comment would be less than helpful or constructive. But they felt they could no longer remain silent on this vital issue. Comments like those made by Health Secretary Ken Clarke were devaluing the work of ambulance staff.
They are perceived, rightly or wrongly, but they are perceived by the rank and file back on the stations as being offensive comments and worse, comments that fail to recognise the professionalism of the role they're carrying out.
In another development in the pay row, Sandwell Council in the West Midlands has set up its own emergency service. The Labour-run authority says it's concerned that army and volunteer services can't offer adequate cover. 2 reconditioned ambulances have been hired and staffed with crews suspended for taking industrial action.
The Lord Chancellor's office is to call for the papers on the case of a mother given 6 months in prison with her baby. Judge James Pickles sentenced her at Wakefield Crown Court for stealing, saying he wanted to discourage women from becoming pregnant to avoid jail. He said judges have to consider, would it be right to let young women know that one way of avoiding custody would be to become pregnant? The baby joins her mother in jail this morning. Judge Pickles said he wasn't saying she deliberately became pregnant. The new government in Romania has placed the whole of the Politburo of the Communist Party under arrest. There are no details of exactly how many people are being detained or precisely what the charges are. In another move, the new Romanian Prime Minister, Petre Roman, has denied in the strongest terms reports on French television that last month's revolution had been carefully pre-planned.
It was the Prime Minister's first live interview. and he thought he was to be linked up with the French Prime Minister in Paris. Instead, French television broadcast a video of a meeting of the leaders of the uprising on December 22nd, the day of the revolution. They were discussing what to call their new movement, and Romanians who'd always believed the front was a spontaneous product of the uprising heard the defense minister saying it had been formed months earlier. It's just not correct, said an angry prime minister. There was nothing organized before, it's just speculation, you can't prove it. And he refused to elaborate later.
Please, not now. Just please, not now.
The National Salvation Front had moved quickly to fill the vacuum left by Ceausescu. But nothing could convince the people that their freedom had been delivered by a palace coup.
Under the Ceausescu regime, 1 million people saw their village homes destroyed and replaced by concrete high-rise flats. Andrew Simmons has been to the village of December 30th, just south of the capital Bucharest.
This is how the vast rural areas of Romania would have been without the drastic demolition plan which Ceausescu inflicted on his people. He called it systemization, a means of taking away the people's homes and forcing them into industrial complexes. No one knows the exact number already moved into these homes, but there are estimates of over 1 million. This woman said she was forced to move out of a 6-bedroomed house into her 2-bedroom flat. It's appalling, she said. Our life has been destroyed. This woman was lucky. During the revolution, her house was due to be knocked down. She resisted by standing in front of the bulldozers. They went away and said I had to pull down my own house, she told us. If I didn't, they said my children would have their identity papers taken away.
The people here speak of an instance 6 months ago when Ceausescu and his security guards arrived and he gesticulated like this, saying, "Demolat, total jos, demolish, everything down."
Romania's revolution may have stopped Ceausescu's Stalinist plan, but the new leaders say they cannot rehouse all of the people. Their lives will never be restored to normal.
Fears of a major pollution disaster on the coast of Morocco are receding as the damaged tanker is towed out to sea. It's hoped the oil still on board the Iranian tanker, the Carg, can be transferred to another vessel once it reaches calm seas. Experts say it's still possible a change of wind could bring ashore the slick it's left behind.
The crippled tanker is now being hauled slowly away from the danger zone. It's painstaking progress. The 3 Dutch salvage tugs on the tow lines can make only 2 miles an hour. Ahead of them, a tortuous 8-day journey to the Cape Verde Islands and sheltered waters where the damaged hull can be repaired. Yet, with every mile, the chance of a catastrophe recedes. The Moroccan coast now over 100 miles to the east. But a smear of crude oil still trails ominously behind the Hague. The saviour so far has been the weather. Calm waters have staved off the threat of the Hague breaking up and prevented the slick from washing onto the Moroccan coast. British pollution experts who've been monitoring the spillage for the last 2 weeks are optimistic a massive disaster can now be averted.
Well, the oil is now so spread out because the accident happened 2 weeks ago that if there is a storm coming onto the shore which would push the oil towards the coast, I think it will break the oil up and very little, if any, will reach the shoreline.
And there we take a break. Then the world news, including a special report from Transylvania on the huge problems faced there in the wake of the overthrow of Ceausescu. Do join us again.
Dad, nice holiday.
And what do you call this, then?
It's new bold liquid, isn't it?
No! Son, we are already stocking loads of other liquids.
Yeah, but it's got a built-in softener.
An L-Dub in here is a thoroughbred racehorse. They all soften, don't they?
But this is different. Look, the rep left these 2 towels. Now, this one's been washed in bold.
See? They're both clean. Go on, have a feel. Blimey, it is softer. Yeah, but for extra softness, they're going to charge extra wonga, aren't they? Customers won't buy it.
But it doesn't cost any more.
What's the catch?
There's no catch. For the first time, there's a liquid with extra softness included in the price.
Just one little thing, Einstein. How are we going to shift that lot?
We run a very fair house here on Sundays. Mum sticks the lunch on, Dad sleeps it off. And I recycle the dishes. God, see the grease on that? Looks like Dad's used it for an oil change. Mind you, when it comes to knocking grease on the head, this fairy liquid's a serious piece of kit. It's kind to your hands, Mum says, and it cleans right through to the squeak. No messing. Here you go. Perfect results every time.
Let us know if you need a hand, son.
Fairy cuts grease to the squeak.
Honestly, they're sisters. They look so alike.
No, I think they're just friends.
The one on the left is more...
More what?
I don't know. There's something about her.
Her secret is oil of Ulay. It's like the skin's natural fluids, so it's absorbed quickly to help bring out the skin's natural beauty. Oil of Ulay and hypoallergenic. You're as young as they see you.
Mummy, have you seen how that man's looking at you?
Welcome back. It's 5:10, and that means it's time for ITN's World News. This edition was broadcast last night by satellite to audiences abroad.
Hello, I'm Brenda Rowe with the ITN World News. We'll bring you the top international news and a business report. The top stories. Czechoslovakia's president says a democratic united Germany is no threat. Weizmann keeps job in deal to save Israel's coalition government. AIDS epidemic in Africa leaves thousands of orphan children. First, Czechoslovakia's new president, Václav Havel, has said a democratic united Germany would not pose a threat to the rest of Europe. In his first visit abroad as president, the former dissident playwright met Communist Party and opposition leaders in East Germany, before travelling to Munich for talks with West German leaders. Mr. Havel said democratic awareness and a democratic system in Germany are more important than the possibility that it might become one nation. Earlier, Mr. Havel was told by Manfred Gerlach, the East German acting head of state, that the Berlin Wall will be pulled down. He said it has become superfluous. It will be replaced by ordinary border markers.
Just 4 days after his election, President Václav Havel arrived in East Berlin to be greeted by his counterpart, Dr. Gerlach. This was a flying visit, and at government headquarters, Havel was looking animated, but maybe still not quite at ease with the formalities of high office. However, sitting informally around a small table, he had direct one-on-one discussions with Dr. Gerlach, exploring the possibilities of building up bilateral relations, with Havel emphasizing he wanted his country to make a positive contribution to a Europe of free and independent states. He also visited the country's anti-fascist shrine, while making it clear today's visit wasn't just symbolic, but a reflection of the quickening tempo of European history, and that he'd come here first because of the inspiration the East German Revolution had given to his own people's struggle. Then he visited the Brandenburg Gate. As he himself said, it would be impossible to come to Berlin without doing so. And he went to the wall, scene of so much rejoicing 2 nights ago. But the wall must go, he said strongly, as must all other divisions in Europe. And then he flew on to Munich and West Germany, the first time he'd ever been here. In a hectic round, which is still going on, Czechoslovakia's new president is meeting as wide a range of political figures as possible, gaining experience and strength for the changes which still lie ahead in his own country. Desmond Hamill, ITN, West Germany.
The Soviet media has reported that drunken mobs went on a 3-day rampage on the Soviet-Iranian border, destroying property and threatening the lives of border guards. Iran has officially complained about the attacks. The reports blamed Azerbaijanis from the enclave of Nakhichevan, saying they caused millions of dollars worth of damage. The rioting allegedly affected more than 130 kilometers of border between the two countries. A report by the human rights group Amnesty International has accused the Israeli government of encouraging its security forces to kill Palestinians. Israel dismissed the report as outrageous nonsense, but it comes as the ruling coalition recovers from a political row which threatened the collapse of the government. After a dispute with Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, Labour Party Science Minister Asa Weitzman has been forced to resign his seat on the decision-making inner cabinet. Last week, Mr. Shamir sacked Mr. Weitzman from the government for his alleged contacts with the PLO, a crime in Israeli law.
Israel's government stepped back from the brink of collapse when the shaky coalition reached yet another compromise to avoid fresh elections. The man at the centre of the row, Asa Weitzman, is a political maverick who nevertheless commands a good deal of support within the country. The Prime Minister, Yitzhak Shamir, sacked him from the cabinet, accusing him of talking to a member of the PLO, which is against Israeli law. But today a typical Israeli solution was found. Weitzman has agreed to resign from the inner cabinet, but Shamir has agreed to let him remain a member of the cabinet himself.
I agreed with it after consulting with my colleagues in the Labour Party, with Mr. Rabin, with Mr. Peres, with my old friend Mr. Bar-Lev, and I did what I did because I'm a member of a party. I'm not an individual. And what I did is what I did in the past, I also did in the framework of a party. Therefore, I had to listen to my colleagues who recommended me to do what it is.
The truth is, Israel's Labour Party doesn't want elections on direct talks with the PLO, as it fears it'll lose.
Any break of the present government will practically undermine the possibility to continue with the peace process.
And Shamir, who's been under pressure from the right wing of his party ever since the peace process began last summer, may well have created the crisis to pacify them. The Israeli cabinet may have solved its immediate crisis, but nothing's been done to deal with the long-term divisions in this country.
A holed Iranian supertanker is being towed further out into the Atlantic to prevent more oil threatening the Moroccan coast. An estimated 70,000 tons of oil have leaked from the tanker Carg 5, creating an oil spill spread over 260 square kilometers. Pollution experts are fighting to prevent the slick reaching the Moroccan coast. Beaches from Tangier in the north to Agadir in the south are threatened. It's feared storms could drive the oil onto the coastline before the slick breaks up. The Vatican has sent a special envoy to Panama in an effort to resolve the crisis over the country's deposed leader Manuel Noriega, who's sheltering in the Vatican embassy in Panama City. Meanwhile, some of the United States troops deployed in Panama have been flown home. Senior officers said no major withdrawal would take place until the issue of General Noriega had been settled.
The U.S. Defense Department has started to withdraw some of its combat troops from Panama. About 300 of the 27,000 American soldiers deployed have been shipped out. The largest deployment of U.S. troops since the Vietnam War is being scaled down. But the troops still left in Panama are in almost perpetual motion around the Vatican embassy 8 days after Manuel Noriega took refuge inside the compound. The job of getting him out has been left largely to diplomats and politicians. One key negotiator is the Archbishop of Panama, Monsignor Marcus McGrath. He has been performing a sort of shuttle diplomacy, moving between the Vatican embassy and the nearby building being used by American negotiators. Noriega still dominates Panamanian politics even as a fugitive, and after several days of inconsistency, Panamanian officials have agreed on a single policy regarding Noriega's fate.
I only asked the nuncio to put him outside the premises. Whatever happens outside the premises is another matter. Of course, I must admit to you that once he's outside the premises, he will go into the hands of the United States.
The new government says it wants to try Noriega after it reconstructs its judicial system, even if it means extraditing him from the United States. The major problem at the moment is that Noriega has so far refused to leave the embassy voluntarily, and the Vatican has decided not to get tough with its unwanted guest.
A man has been killed in a car bomb attack in Northern Ireland. It was the British province's first sectarian killing of the new decade. The victim, a taxi driver, was taking his daughter to school in Belfast when the device exploded under the car seat. The 16-year-old girl suffered minor injuries. The Irish Republican Army later said it carried out the attack, claiming the dead man was a member of 2 Protestant paramilitary organizations. A Roman Catholic bishop in Northern Ireland has called for people to follow the example of Eastern Europe by protesting peacefully for change. But after more than 20 years of sectarian conflict, the province still appears to be as divided as ever.
At the end of the year, which saw the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the divide in Belfast seems as permanent as ever. Unlike Berlin, Belfast's wall was built to protect its people, separating Catholic from Protestant, and there seems little prospect of it coming down. And the violence continues. 39 civilians were killed in 1989, including Henry Babington, a Catholic shot by mistake by the IRA. His widow can't come to terms with the actions of the gunman.
I would ask them, for God's sake, to think about what they're doing to the people who live here in this beautiful land. Because it's a beautiful country, and there's room for everybody to live here side by side.
And the parents of Protestant Adam Lambert, mistakenly shot by loyalists 2 years ago, say they feel no anger.
Adam wouldn't have wished us to be bitter.
I usually go on a Saturday morning to tidy up the grave. All of a sudden I said to him, Adam, I said, I suppose after 2 years you're one of God's right-hand men. Next time you're talking to him, put a word in for me, will you?
Adverts suit Adam.
Some church leaders believe events in Europe could inspire hope in Belfast.
The way of the gun is outdated, it's archaic, it doesn't work, it's immoral. And I think if we look at what's happening in Eastern Europe today, through non-violent protest, that is the way forward.
This time of year always brings such peace calls. For 20 New Years now, they've been largely ignored.
Experts are warning that 6 million people worldwide will be infected with AIDS by the year 2000. Africa already has an estimated 3 million sufferers. In Uganda alone, there are around 1 million, 1 in every 16 people. The worst hit areas around Masaka and Rakai, where the epidemic has left more than 40,000 children without parents.
For years, the nuns of the Medical Missionaries of Mary have set out to help the victims of Uganda's conflicts. They've tended the orphans of war. Now they try to help the orphans of AIDS. These children have no one to look after them but one grandmother. Sister Ursula Sharp and her team come to check that everything is all right.
She has 15 orphans to take care of, and we have been helping her.